Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe back with a little bit more World of Warcraft, and this is some PvP action, the battle for Tarren Mill. This is a special battleground in order to celebrate WoW's 10th anniversary. Blizzard wanted to create a temporary battleground that allows the Alliance and Horde to fight over the iconic Hillsbrad location. Now, this is, of course, going to be on my other character, the Hunter, and the Hunter is actually my first vanilla character, although for many years he was a Night Elf, and as I had mentioned in my last video, I thought that the Night Elf animations were, well, flat out terrible, so I couldn't stand looking at them. I had to pay for a race change, but if I'm to be honest, I actually think my human character with the new models and animations actually looks really, really good. And even if they do resolve the Night Elf animations, I'll probably keep them as is. But anyways, this guy goes back, and if you grew up on a PvP server back in the day, you know that there used to be a lot of combat in Hillsbrad foothills between Southshore and Tarren Mill. The Alliance and Horde typically battled it out here quite a bit, mostly before the existence of battlegrounds within World of Warcraft. So this is where most people spent their time fighting it out. So this is, in a way, a recreation of that time, and it does bring back fond memories. It's really cool to see this kind of combat, even though it is fairly simplistic. It's just some good nostalgia, if you will. So before we get into some WoW nostalgia, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the Hunter class and tell you why I had originally picked it back in the day. So 2004 World of Warcraft, sitting at that character creation screen, I wanted to make something that was like a ranger. I was always into rangers in D&D and Lord of the Rings, Aragorn style characters and whatnot. And I saw this class that could use bows and melee weapons at the time, and I thought, well, that seems similar. You do get a pet there as well, so that could be interesting. And so, yeah, I made a hunter, and I picked the Night Elf race because it just seemed kind of cool and interesting. And your eyes glow, so that was neat, right? But, you know, it was one of those things where I grew to just love the character so much. I felt like I could do so many things, and when it came to PvE and PvP, I excelled. And, well, it was a pretty easy class to play. I never really felt like I died a whole bunch of times, and I felt like I did pretty good damage as well. Fast forward a few years, the Hunter is a drastically different class. You know, you don't have a melee weapon anymore. You're just strictly range. You can move around and shoot at the same time with a lot of your shots, if not all of them. There's maybe a few that just take longer to shoot, but generally it's a completely different character, a mobile archer or gunner, if you will, in this case, because I do have a gun loaded up here. But I do like the way it is now. You know, you kind of start to miss that melee weapon, the ability to just switch into melee. It was just kind of like a cool cinematic ability, if you will. But, you know, I have to say, all in all, I do like what the character is. I do understand why they made some of the changes. But here you also notice that I am not using a pet. And you're like, where's your pet? That's the main part of being a hunter, right? Well, at least part of it. 50% of the character, you would think. Well, at level 100, there's a talent called Lone Wolf. And Lone Wolf allows you to forego your pet in exchange for 30% more damage on some of your main shots. And on top of that, it will allow you to use a wide variety of buffs. So I have several buffs that I can choose to make up for the gap within a party or raid. So that's kind of nice, a little bit more utility. And it kind of just makes the character more like a ranger. I know what you're thinking, wow, no pet? That's crazy. But honestly, in this PvP situation, that 30% extra damage for my shots, you know, I just kind of like worrying about myself more than having to mess with the pet. I don't mind it. I really don't. I thought it was just a cool addition to the character. Again, I can call the pet anytime I want with that talent. You know, this isn't a spec that doesn't allow pets. It's simply a talent where if you have the pet, you don't get that 30% bonus or the ability to put whatever buff you want. But you get rid of the pet, you get all those things, and you change the way you play a little bit. But honestly, I'm actually loving it. I think it's been great in dungeons and raids. Well, I've only done one raid, the Molten Core one, which I might have some footage of later. But it's been a lot of fun. I like the character like this, and as much as I enjoy having some sort of, you know, feline pet or cat pet, tiger, lion, whatever, it's just, I don't know, there's just something about playing like this that I enjoy. I guess in MMOs, really, I'm not huge into having pets to worry about, so to have one of my favorite classes without it, I'm okay with it, if you will. So anyways, there's that explanation out of the way, because I know a lot of you viewers probably aren't back into WoW or you haven't played for years, but you like to just watch the content, so I thought I would explain that. Anyways, PvP-wise, back in the day, you know, there was a time where Battlegrounds didn't exist. And when they added them, or I should say before they added them, people would play a lot of open world PvP, which honestly is my favorite. I come from games like Dark Age of Camelot, where world PvP was the PvP. There was a battleground. There was only one battleground in Dark Age, and I believe that's where Blizzard got the idea from. But the real stuff happened out in Realm versus Realm. You had the three factions, the three separate continents, and you'd go outside the borders and mix it up with the other factions, castles and keep sieges and things. They used to have a saying, it was PvP the way it ought to be, and I believed it. I think Mythic came up with some of the best Realm versus Realm combat, and I still think they, in many cases, did a better job at PvP than even WoW can. And I saw that Warhammer Online, which was done by Mythic as well, actually had an upgraded version of what I saw in Dark Age, and I was sad to see that game go. I don't think that people gave it a fair shot, and it, of course, came out a few months before Lich King, so that was its own fault, but blame EA for that, as we usually do. Anyway, with World of Warcraft, you know, the PvP, PvPing in an MMO is not always my favorite thing to do, because it's not Twitch, you know, it's just filled with strange gameplay mechanics that don't always make sense, and in many cases it comes down to who has better gear. Well, most of the time it comes down to who has better gear. You know, there is some skill involved in timing and whatnot and tactics, but really, if you've got better gear, it's not that hard to figure out how to play, especially if you're playing the Hunter. Again, let's face it, the Hunter is not a hard class to play. You're ranged, physical range damage. You can sit back and shoot all day, all night, and avoid, you know, direct confrontation. And especially if you got people backing you up, heals and whatnot, you can survive a pretty long time. If you're using your pet, usually you've got that standing by to keep you safe, maybe keep a rogue off of you. But, you know, if you're playing like this with the Lone Wolf talent, you have to be a little bit more careful. In this particular battle, I do get killed twice, but only twice, and I think I did okay overall, damage-wise on the team, considering that this is 40-man? I think this is a 40-man, but anyways, the objective for this one is first to get 300 kills, or most kills before time runs out, which I think starts out at 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes, something like that. But it is a back and forth. It was always back and forth, and this is pretty much a recreation of what we would see in open world PvP. Nowadays, of course, most people are going to spend their time in battlegrounds and arenas and things like that, because those things just provide more reward, easier to get honor points and other types of equipment. But with this one, again, just that nostalgia rush, you know, you're almost remembering. It's almost like you're just going back in time and having these iconic battles again, which as you can see, are insane. I mean, these are crazy battles. And even if you're wondering what's going on, you're like, what are all these numbers? What's all this, you know, what are all these flashes of light? What are all these icons? And, you know, it looks confusing. Yeah, you know, to somebody who hasn't done this before, it is. But even though MMO PvP isn't really my favorite thing in the world, even though I would prefer a more Twitch situation, it's still a lot of fun because there are some underlying tactics. And thankfully in this match, we actually had kind of a battleground leader. You'll see some flashes of text in the center of the screen sometimes, or maybe some things in the chat. We had somebody who was, you know, yelling at people to fall back, you know, hold their positions, you know, return to base. Because a lot of times with this back and forth combat between Horde and Alliance, it simply comes down to just maintaining a defensive position and letting them throw bodies at a wall of weaponry, blades and shields and guns and bows and arrows and things like that. Just letting them come at you, letting them fail, you know, perhaps luring them back into some of the NPC guards, which is usually a tactic. Obviously, we have a graveyard on each end, so people that are getting killed will respawn at that graveyard. You know, that's your reinforcements. So your reinforcements are going to hit the front line. But it's just one of those things where you get caught up in the excitement of it, you know? I mean, and PvP right now, it's not bad because they kind of got rid of some crappy armor mechanics that they had. They originally had like a PvP stat, and I thought that that was just a stupid thing to have. Now you can still get PvP armor, but what happens is that armor is like, let's say for example, item level 620, but when you're in a PvP situation, it upgrades to 675. So you don't have this stat. So really you could go in with top end raiding gear or PvE gear at your end game and still enjoy PvP without having to really just get some weird gear that has a stat, just a strict PvP stat. So yes, this still, it does get upgraded, so there is PvP armor, but it's not really hard to acquire. You know, you spend a couple hours in different battlegrounds and whatnot, you can get a couple of pieces, or you can get different sets, and you can get rewards for completing battlegrounds and winning, and you can get lockboxes. The other day, actually, not in this video, but the other day I got a like a purple lockbox, and it had a PvP gun in it, so it was 620 and then levels up to 675. So, you know, I'm set in regards to firearms when I'm doing PvP here with the Hunter. But, you know, beyond that, you know, this does get stale after a while. And I can tell you, though, that it was much worse. Back when I originally played WoW PvP, when they first introduced Battlegrounds, because, again, everything was World PvP for the longest time. But then they added Battlegrounds. And like I was saying, I think they got that idea probably from Dark Age of Camelot. But in this game, there was, of course, more than just one. Dayak only had the one. This one added several. We had Arathi Basin, Warsong Gulch, and an Alterac Valley, I think were the first three. Those ones were a lot of fun when they first came out. Of course, a little bit more difficult, especially if you're talking about Alterac Valley, which in some cases used to last 8 hours or more. Sometimes you would finish playing. I was like, okay, I've been in Alterac Valley for 2 hours. I got to get out of here. And you would log back in the next day, and the same battle that you left was going on because you've cycled through different players in the same match that would just never end. And that's why today Alterac Valley is a lot different. In my opinion, it's not as fun, but I don't really see any other way around it. It's something that it just had to be done. But Alterac back then was actually a real war. Like, it was crazy how it involved all the NPCs and everything that you had to do just to kind of help out your side. But here, you know, things are dumbed down a little bit, you know, with everything that's changed over the years. Originally, there was a PvP ranking system that I think went to, I think there was 20 ranks. I managed to get to rank 10, which on the Alliance side provided you with the title Lieutenant Commander. And I can tell you that getting to rank 10 was a feat in itself. because what would happen is that you would have to keep PvPing throughout the week. Otherwise, by the next week, when everything got counted up, you would either lose rank or gain rank or points towards the next rank, and so on and so forth, to get different items. So there was like a rank 10 lieutenant commander set of armor, which I managed to acquire all of it. And then you could try to get more and get into the weaponry and trinkets and things like that as well. They had tabards as well. Very difficult, very painful. Many hours of my life forfeit back then, just getting to rank 10. But after rank, I was done. I was like, I can't do this anymore. There's no way. A few people were able to get to Grand Marshal and things like that, which was like the highest rank. And I wouldn't know how. I almost wondered, and I had heard stories of people, you know, taking turns with a character. So you would have like two guys take shifts on the character just to level it up through PvP, because you would have to spend hours of your life to try to get to Grand Marshal. I mean, I really don't know how one person can do it unless they just had no job, no school, just had a conveyor belt of food going towards their mouth or something, sitting in a because you had to PvP so much, even if you were winning. And again, back then, Alterac Valley would last forever, and Warsun Gulch and Arathi Basin, you know, it was just really rough. Everything was based on one server too, so it was kind of cool though, because you got to almost know everybody in the battleground. Like, I remember going through these war zones, and you would see, I don't remember his name. I want to say this orc's character's name was Jimbo, and this guy had like the top end rank armor for his faction, and he would walk out, and he was a warrior, and we would see him in this armor, and he would always be there, and we'd be like, all right, it's Jimbo, everybody focus fire Jimbo. He would come out looking like a true orc commander, because he had the coolest armor and the coolest weapons, and it was iconic to see, you know, these guys with that PvP armor that, you know, took hours to get. And on the Alliance side, we had our guys too that we would recognize that had the cool Alliance armor, and you'd be like, all right, follow him in the battle, and it was just so epic, you know. And even though that kind of system really wouldn't work today, you kind of miss it, because there was a certain level of camaraderie that created just by maintaining familiar faces. You weren't in the same guild with them, you weren't friends with these people, but you still got to know them, and maybe you did create some friendships along the way, just because you're like, oh hey man, I've seen you in this battleground a few times, let's go do this, or hey, you capture the flag, I'll cover you, or whatever. It did build something truly great, you know, out of something that started out really simple. Because again, here, you know, we're just going through a rotation of button presses and whatnot, and you know, this isn't Twitch, you know, and it's like I said, it could come down to just who simply has the most armor, or the best armor and weapons and gear, or who has a pocket healer. In many cases, you can't win unless your healers are on point, especially if you're a class like the Warrior. The Warrior, very gear-dependent class, and on his own is just dead in PvP. If that Warrior doesn't have heals, it's game over. But with a lot of the other classes, yeah, the survivability is a lot higher. Druids, hunters, things like that. Rogues can vanish, get out of the way. Mages, even just being able to teleport out of harm's way. You know, there's so many things. The survivability of a lot of these other classes is just through the roof. It's unbelievable. Which is why I really hated PvPing on the Warrior. Is as good as I wanted to be at it, I don't think it was ever really for me. I still do it from time to time, but you know, again, if there's nobody watching your back, you're done. It's game over. So Blizzard, please help the Warrior out a little bit. Although I see a lot of people using that new Gladiator stance in the protection spec, so I don't know how that's going. But anyways, you can see that this battle had turned in our favor. Again, we did have some good leadership here, so special thanks to whoever was doing that. I wouldn't mind actually trying to kind of lead a battle group myself and just, you know, throw out some directions, but then that pretty much sacrifices your own playtime because you really got to pay a lot more attention to chat and whatnot and look at your map. But it would almost be cool if you could get rewarded for those types of things, maybe. I will admit that as an Alliance player, the Alliance usually in Battlegrounds isn't as good at PvP. Especially the smaller ones, like Warsong Gulch, Arathi, anything that's 10v10 or smaller. Or maybe are there some 15s? I don't know. Usually Alliance fails pretty bad in PvP. And situations like this game going our way, but again, I think due to good leadership. And here's where I totally screw up. This is actually my first death right here. I couldn't get out of it. I break one stun and then get sucked right back in. I think that's a Death Knight that does that, and I just overextended and bought the farm. Ah, man, I was so pissed off because I was trying to go for 0 deaths, but anyway. I think that's one of 2 that's going to happen. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. The Alliance, not so great at PvP. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the mentality of the average Alliance player, age, knowledge, teamwork for Horde players. I ask people, what do you think the reason is? A lot of people say, well, there's older players, more mature players, blah, 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 in the Horde. I don't know if that's true. I'm 33 years old. I play Alliance. What does that say about me? I have no idea. Whatever. But when it comes to the bigger battles, 40-mans, Alterac Valley, Isle of Conquest, is that one of them? I forget all the names. There's so many BGs these days. Alliance tends to win 40-mans, but we don't usually win 15 to 10. There is a little bit more coordination needed in maps like Arathi Basin or Warsong when you're doing capture the flag or territory control in some cases. So I think when it comes to Zerg tactics, the Alliance can hold their own, but when it comes to holding territory and capping flags, things like that, just seems like the Horde is far more coordinated or perhaps just more interested in PvP. I don't know what the deal is. I will tell you I do feel it's a little sad because I do enjoy the thought of Horde versus Alliance, and I really even prefer World PvP. And it's sad to kind of go back to old content and run around and say, oh, this used to be, this area, Hillsbrad or whatever, used to be filled with battles, and now it's just dead. It's just people leveling up or whatever. There is cross-server in those areas, but it doesn't help, and so a lot of the old or the newer world PvP objectives like towers and things don't really mean anything to anyone. And so unless you've got some friends that are just going around and ganking territory, you're kind of on your own, and you just have to be careful there. And it just seems like the Horde is more interested in that kind of thing, and then the Alliance is just kind of chilling. I know on my server, strangely enough, even though we're on a PvP server, we just have, it seems like, way more PvE guilds, which is kind of sad. Even my own guild, which is kind of just, a friends of a friends guild, and I'm just on there hanging out or whatever. Not too involved, I guess, but we got a couple of good people that hang out with us once in a while. It's just, they're more of a PvE raiding guild, so when I ask, hey, let's, how about this BG or whatever, there's not that many people that are really interested. So it's kind of sad, but I still manage to have fun from time to time. Again, it's just nice to hold that Alliance banner high and let the Horde know that we are still a force to be reckoned with. Sometimes. Usually. At least in Alterac Valley. But, again, I never claimed to be a master of anything in any of the games I play or cover, and the same can be said for this. If anything, I'm a casual PvPer, and, this is one of those matches that went our way, again, thanks to good leadership, and, just some good players in general. You will see here, we're going to sort this by team so I can somehow get onto this list, and there I am, Strafe main. And yeah, I did all right in damage, some killing blows there as well. I'm happy with that, but you can see there's a lot of hunters towards the top in regards to damage and killing blows. Of course, right? ranged weaponry. What do you think's going to happen? That's just the way it is. But I was pretty proud of what I did. I'm not even fully geared out. I think I was in the lower 600s because I had just recently hit 100 on this hunter. Really enjoying this class, though. Probably going to spend more time on it. I've also got a 100 warrior, of course, if you saw my last video. And then I do have a 95 paladin, which I was trying to roll as a healer, but I don't know how that's going. It feels a lot slower. But anyways, I kind of want to do more PvP. This was a lot of fun. If you're just getting back into WoW, remember that this Tarren Mill battleground is temporary. So get in while it lasts. You can get the title Tarren Mill Terror if you're on the Alliance. I forget what it's called for the Horde, but there's a title on the line. I don't think there's any other rewards. There's, of course, an achievement in the title. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that you've enjoyed today's look at World of Warcraft, Warlords of Draenor. This is, of course, one of those games that I like to get into from time to time. It's a bit more relaxing and a nice break from stressing out and raging in tank games. But again, thank you so very much for joining me. I will definitely see you on the next one.